Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Anyway, so let me tell you a little bit about my guests. I'm really happy to see them again. It's been quite a while. Gary Evans is the co-founder and director of Holistic Healing Therapy Limited. Gary has been investigating earth mysteries and studying acoustical properties for more than 20 years, from the Great Pyramids to Moray, a site in the Andes. Gary has worked at some of the most fascinating and mysterious places in the world. He recently went with his wife Olga to study in India and Goa, India, to become a yoga teacher. Let me tell you a little bit about Olga, another beautiful being that I love having on the show. She is a co-founder and director of Holistic Healing Therapy. She's a qualified mindfulness and meditation teacher. She is a level 3 Usui Reiki Ryoho master teacher, like me, wonderful, and a yoga teacher now, a crystal healer, and a sound therapist. She's also a blogger for the Huffington Post, and she just finished up her 200-hour yoga teacher training with Gary and Goa, India, and that is why we are going to have them on today. So let me welcome you guys to the show. Welcome to the show, Olga and Gary. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, hi everybody, and hi Bernard. Good to be back.
Yes, it's very nice to hear your voices again. How have you guys been? We didn't have a chance to talk before the show. How's everything going with you two?
Busy.
Busy.
Yeah, life is definitely exciting and very busy, and so that was why we thought it'd be a good time to have a catch up and see where the show can go.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So thank you for reaching out to me. And I didn't even know that you had gone to India. So that's really exciting. When did you guys head off to India? How long ago was that?
End of November, and we got back on December 28th. So I think it was just over 5 weeks we were there in total.
Great. And what motivated you to want to, well, A, become a yoga instructor, and B, what was it about, I guess, the teaching center there that drove you and motivated you to go there?
Well, I think India is such an interesting place. I actually have been there studying Ayurveda and looking at Ayurvedic centers. And for us, yoga is something very deep. So we wanted to find foundations of yoga and learn from the source rather than study somewhere else like UK or Europe. So that was our motivation. And also my dad lives in Delhi, so we just planned the trips.
Very, very nice. So let me start off. How was the yoga training? Tell us a little bit about what they taught you there.
Well, yeah, because the other reason to study in India is if you want to learn about something, you want to try and get as close to the source as possible to make sure that the teachings are intact. So that was part of the reason for going to India. And well, we can get into it a bit later on, but there's this foundation of it called the 8 limbs of yoga, which you could argue is the scientific process of reaching liberation, as they call, or enlightenment. And the reason it's a scientific process is because it's the same steps for everybody, and if you follow it closely, you should be able to reproduce the results. So it was the yoga teacher training, so it's 200 hours in 25 days, and that means you've basically got 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and it was very rustic conditions, so we definitely did it in a hardcore way. at the end of the course, our yoga teacher said, actually, the conditions you've just done your teacher training in is more extreme than doing it in an ashram. So like, okay.
Oh. Wow. So how, as far as like personally, I'm very interested as an individual taking this type of training. Did you find that it enhanced your awakening, your enlightenment? How was it for you individually and personally? Did it expand your consciousness more? Beside, of course, learning how to be a teacher.
Well, actually, it was life-changing, and by it I really mean life-changing in all aspects. When I came back with Gary to England, our parents and our family couldn't recognize us. They were saying we're different people, and we were talking a lot to our teacher about the process and how actually the teaching works, because of course it builds up over time, and effectively is just clearing everything that you have in your life, making your vision more straightforward and expanding your energy. As a Reiki healer, I came back to my house and I could actually feel my energy expanding.
Oh, wow.
So when I would sit on the sofa, I could actually feel it expanding over and all above. And it was very interesting from a consciousness expansion point of view, because we probably couldn't see ourselves there and how we changed that much, but we could see other people changing, and it was absolute massive change. Many people stayed in India and then would go to ashrams. Many people would change their mind and go into Reiki teaching or yoga teaching. So from a consciousness point of view, I think it's one of the strongest things I've ever done. And I would recommend to everyone, and it doesn't matter whether you're spiritual or not, just try and see. It's very good.
Wow, very nice. And what about you, Gary? How was the experience for you?
Well, yeah, so one of the biggest changes was in my body, and this is one of the things that's kind of been reinforced into us. The kind of perception of yoga and the kind of people that normally do it, and how a lot of people don't think it's for them, because we always see these very flexible people doing yoga. But at the start of the course, my legs were kind of like up like that, just when I wanted to sit cross-legged. And by the end of the course, they've come down to almost touching the floor. So the style of yoga that we've teach is called traditional Himalayan style yoga, and it's actually a therapeutic, and so you can work on the different areas of the body and make each area much more supple with daily practice is what we were of course doing. So it's like the sort of turbocharged course. So when we're doing the courses here, the sessions, we try and encourage people to do things at home, because like physiotherapy, you need to do something regularly, and then you'll start to see the benefits quite quickly. So that was one side of it, just seeing this change in the body and muscles appearing, because it was obviously quite a strenuous course, quite a few hours each day. I mean, there was one day we did three yoga sessions, I guess about 4.5 hours in total or something. But one of the biggest things that came to my attention was, because you hear about like the asanas, the postures,
yes,
and pranayama is quite widely recognised, but the term that I hadn't really looked at very much was pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of the senses, and it's the step before concentration, and then concentration, the next step is meditation. So there was a kind of gap in my understanding of the process. So that's really, now I've joined the dots, I've got a much more solid practice to follow daily.
Ah, very nice, very nice. So for me, what's so fascinating is that you were able to go, as we would say, to the source of it all, versus what we have here in America. We have, I would think, is a very different type of yoga compared to what you were able to experience while you were in India. Can you tell us any differences that you've seen between Western and the yoga that you were taught while you were in India?
Well, I think the difference is just so huge that I wouldn't even call yoga what I practiced before I went to this course. The traditional hatha school says that you need to do asanas and pranayamas. Pranayamas are breathing exercises to extend the life force, only to a point that you are able to sit still without any movement in meditation for 1 hour 36 minutes. Once you reach that state and you are able to do it consistently, then you don't need to do any more asanas or breathing exercises or anything else. And then you just work on your meditation to reach enlightenment. So there is a lot more about work with the breath, work with the energy. And rather than putting your body in a posture that probably your body doesn't even want to go into, it's working with your energy and then putting the posture on it. So when your energy aligns in a certain way, certain postures come actually just spontaneously. And that's what the yogis talk about. They came with these postures that we're now teaching people in a meditative state where their energy just pushed them into those postures. They didn't actually have to strain themselves. And it's a lot about just going with your deeper inner self rather than looking around the mats and looking at the teacher and thinking, oh, I have to push myself. I have to be able to do that. It's a very different approach.
I like that. It seems more, well, almost intuitive in a sense. Like you're listening to your body's energy versus, like you said, copying the teacher. Gary, what are some of the differences that you've noticed between our westernized yoga and the Eastern yoga?
Yeah, well, I guess I should first of all say that I know that you do find these teachers, obviously, that have also trained in India. So occasionally you're going to come across people that are teaching very similar style. But generally, the yoga that I find in England is obviously focused on the physical postures. And so that's what's widely recognised. And so it was understanding these different limbs of yoga and how it all comes together as a whole. And the other side of it is how the sound also comes into yoga, because of course you do the chanting, so that resonated very nicely with the other direction that I came at this from. And we're obviously going to try and share the as much of this as possible in England, so we're not going to water it down. But the way of working with the body was just so enjoyable compared to what I've done previously, and really understanding that if there's a weakness in the body, that these postures help with that weakness. So at the moment I'm working on the flexibility of my legs, because my teacher gave me a 90-day challenge to get into the lotus posture. He says if you do these postures daily, even from where I was with very little flexibility, then you can get there. So that's my current challenge. But whatever somebody is suffering with, there's obviously a range of postures, which is what we learn in the teacher training. So whether that's digestive issues, I had weak knees as well, and the posture's really built up the muscle around the back of my knee, so they don't feel weak anymore. So it's really about reconditioning the entire body and then getting the energy moving up the spine, and also because in the West there's a completely different branch of yoga, Kundalini yoga.
Yes.
But Kundalini yoga is part of Hatha, as we were taught in India. And so again, it's like another deeper aspect of yoga that didn't come over to the West until, and Yogi Bhajan is widely recognised at making it popular in the West. So he picked a certain number of postures from Hatha yoga, called it Kundalini yoga, and then sort of packaged it and did the marketing so it was adopted by a Western audience. So that's how it's come over to us. But in a traditional system, it's all part of Hatha and something that you would work up to as you develop just the traditional yoga. So that was an interesting explanation. And that's happened with a number of different aspects of yoga, because there's this huge number of postures.
Right.
I mean, the book we were learning from is 500 plus pages. So a lot of people have just taken certain bits of Hatha Yoga and rebranded it and made it their own. So that was quite interesting to see how the progression has come across.
That's very fascinating, and I have to ask you, as someone who is not fluent in yoga myself, I know basically what I've learned from speaking to you guys over the years, and maybe taking buying a DVD and doing it myself. But for those of us that are interested in pursuing some type of yoga practice, there are a lot of traditions out there. There's a lot of different styles out there, and you said the branch or the style or tradition you did was called Himalayan yoga. Is that what you said?
Himalayan style Hatha Yoga.
The Himalayan style Hatha yoga. Can you share a little bit of the differences and the different types of traditions that might be out there? If people are wondering, what is just a generalized explanation, maybe just for those of us that are interested and want to know the difference?
Well, probably I can go ahead answering this one. Originally, there was only one style of yoga, Raja Yoga, royal yoga, and we had the philosophy there, which was Ashtanga Yoga, or 8 limbs of yoga, described by Patanjali. So it was like a theory behind yoga and yogic practices. And then you would have Hatha Yoga, which consists of postures, asanas, as we practice anywhere probably in the world. Then pranayama, the breathing exercises to extend the life force. Mudras and bandhas, they are locks and gestures to conserve the energy after you've created loss of energy through asanas. And kriyas, the cleansing practices. And so in original text, it says that Hatha Yoga is basically the only practical type of yoga. So when we hear about different styles of yoga, Kundalini Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, Power Yoga, many other styles that we now have in the West, they mostly come from Hatha Yoga. And Hatha Yoga in itself was originally very not as big as it is now, because Hatha Yoga nowadays is also Tantra Yoga, which came from other traditions. But I would say that everything can be narrowed down to Hatha Yoga, or the practical part of it, the theoretical part of it, which is Ashtanga Yoga.
Ah, okay. Well, that clarifies a little bit more for me. Speaking of yoga and the different styles of yoga, can you share with us a little bit as well? Tell us a little bit how yoga got started. Where did it come from? Who started it? What was where did it originate, or how did it originate?
I really love this story, so I might share it. So the legend is that Shiva was the first yogi who came with this knowledge and who then wanted to pass it on to his wife Parvati, but he didn't want anyone else to know about these techniques. So he went with her on an isolated island, gave her the teachings of yoga, but then the fish overheard, and so Shiva had to turn that fish into a saint and tell him, you can only teach these teachings to one disciple. And so yoga went from that saint to other saints, and just one by one, slowly. And these saints, the first yogis, are called Naths. It's Nath. And you can also find groups of Naths in Himalayan region. That's where our teacher learned from. And Naths are the groups of original yogis. But at some point, Patanjali, whom we talked about, who came up with 8 limbs of yoga, he came about and he revealed the knowledge to everyone in his books, in his teachings. So that was the time for yoga to be revealed. But for a very long time, it was a very secret practice, which was only available to one disciple at a time, because it was thought that Shiva didn't think it was the right time for yoga to appear, and only in Kali Yoga period it did emerge, and now we have it.
Oh, wow, what a wonderful story that is. And as far as well, I guess the how should we say, the non-folk story of it, is there a way that it is traced, like, like Usui Reiki, we trace it back to, Usui and maybe some of the things that he found. Uh, do we know who the original modern yogi is or was?
That depends on how far back in time you want to go, I think. But there's been a number. But Paramahansa Yogananda is credited as being one of the ones that came to the West originally, which was early 20th century. So I give him a lot of credit. There was a couple of other people around that time. So that was when it started spreading across the West. But obviously before that, it was springing up all across India with these different traditions, and that's where all of these kind of offshoots were starting, the fracturing. So you have to go right back thousands of years to trace it all the way back to this original story and into the mists of time, as these things always go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We've only got about 3 minutes before the next commercial, and I really want to go into the 8 limbs of yoga and, of course, the goal of yoga after the break. But before we do that, can you share some of the benefits of doing yoga for, the everyday person, whether it's for spiritual awakening or for health? What are some of the benefits that people get from practicing any type of yoga or the yoga that you're going to be teaching?
Well, the benefits are really unlimited. It depends on what you're looking for, because I think I love yoga so much because it's really a holistic system. So if you just want to be more productive at work, improve your cognitive skills, there are studies showing that it can help with cognitive skills. It can also help with social skills. There are a few studies, but of course, physical benefits. It helps build up muscle, improve flexibility, improve your sense of balance, and lots of studies showing it helping the mental health. So some people who might suffer from stress or probably depression, it is advisable that for them to try at least yoga and see whether it works. And in lots of recovery programs and therapeutic programs, post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, they started introducing yoga, and many therapists now introduce yoga as part of their overall plan to help people have a better life and improve their conditions.
Sounds great to me. Actually, I have a personal question. Is there a way of doing yoga without doing the postures? Is there a mental way, a meditative way, an energetic way? Does it have to have the postures?
Yeah. Well, our teacher did say that you can visualize doing a lot of these things if you didn't actually want to do the physical aspect of it. So, of course, I mean, you're trying to get towards the goal of quietening the mind.
Yes.
So if that's what you're thinking of in terms of yoga, then there's obviously different techniques. So there are there's the chanting and the breathing exercises if you don't actually want to do the physical aspect.
Wonderful. Well, we're going on a commercial break right now. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. We're going to continue this discussion going into the 8 limbs and into the goals of yoga. We'll be right back.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And yes, by all means, listen to that message. And if you can, please make a donation to support the radio station. Also, as well, please, the Just Bernard Show and all of the work that I'm doing on my YouTube channel and across social media also needs your support. You can become a patron of my work and of the show at patreon.com/Bernard Alvarez. And yes, we also are appealing for your support at this time. So take a moment, go to patreon.com/Bernard Alvarez and see how you can support us. We have lots of free gifts for you, by the way. We have levels of support you can do. And anyway, we give back if you give to us as well. And of course, Revolution Radio and all the work that I do, the Just Bernard Show, are available to the public for free always. So let me welcome our guest back to the show. We're going to go into the the gist of today's talk, is I'm really excited to understand more about the philosophy of yoga. And I would like to, first of all, welcome back our guests. Thank you, Gary and Olga. Can you tell us now, maybe we can go into what you were talking about, the 8 limbs of yoga. What are the 8 limbs of yoga? Is it similar to, what is it, the Buddhist teachings? What is it, the 4 pathways or whatnot?
Well, certainly elements shared. Well, I can tell you, so yoga being the holistic system for the integration of mind, body, spirit, and with the universe. That's basically the 4 things that you're bringing into harmony. So a lot of the things that we learnt about, which we can. So there's 2 things to cover. So first of all, the eight limbs, and there's going to be 7 aspects that are our responsibility to practice. And then the 8th one, as our teacher would say, happens basically automatically when you've practiced these other 7 aspects. So the first one is social conduct, and some of these things you will feel in your heart, because I know some of them came to me just spontaneously because it just feels right. So there's 5 aspects to social conduct that we can look at in a minute. Then there's your personal conduct, and that also has 5 aspects which we can look at. So then there's the asana, which is the yoga postures, the pranayama, which is the extension of vital force, pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of all the senses inwards, and then dharana, so that's the concentration, which is actually concentration, I think, is what most of us think of as meditation, but it's a concentration on one object, or like a mantra over and over and over again, so you can quieten the mind and bring it into a single pointed focus. And then that leads to the next step, which is dhyana, which is actually meditation. So most of the time we're going to be practicing concentration, and if we are very good, we will get to that point of meditation where you can tap into perhaps intuitive insights and these kind of things. So by working through those 7 limbs, that's what leads to this, the final stage, you could call it, or liberation, or where you might say perhaps enlightenment happens. Because once you reach this stage of liberation, life is never supposed to be the same again. And as I understand it, that means going and connecting to this great source of love, and kind of feeling this amazing feeling in your heart, and the kind of connectedness to everyone and everything around you. But it's a process, and it's a practice. You need to keep practicing it, and it will happen automatically. Automatically, you will get each step, and then finally you'll work through to liberation. So of course we've come back with a lot of homework to do.
That's wonderful. Olga, how is the process of going through the 8 limbs for you? Are you on a specific one you're working on, or do they kind of happen simultaneously, or a little bit here and there? Or actually, and any suggestions you might have for people that are planning the practice?
Well, I'm actually planning to make a video or an article about our daily regime, because we set up a very good regime back in Goa when we were doing the yoga training, which I was very dedicated to bringing out in our everyday life, because it was so good and beneficial. So I can tell you what it's roughly looking like at the moment. We wake up at about 5:36 a.m. and we start with the cleansing procedures. So usually it would be neti, it's called. So you would be cleansing your nostrils, or with water, salt and water solution, or you'll be cleansing your intestines. There are different types of cleansing. Then you have a light breakfast, and you do yoga practice, asanas, and pranayama, the breathing practice to extend the life force. And that takes about an hour, 32 hours approximately. And then we go into the sound work. So we do chanting, and we do something with the drum or the gong, and that's when our day begins. That's then the working day, and we also do meditation every morning. And it sounds a lot, but actually what I learned is that if you even do, say, you start your day with 10-minute meditation, 10-15-minute meditation, then you do some type of cleansing, it can take 5 minutes. Then you do yoga for half an hour, and you finish with a bit of chanting. It's not actually that much, and I think everyone can really increase their energy and see improvement in productivity and just happiness if they just try to do it every day.
Yeah, so the first few days when we started, because we had this regime every day with the training, the first few days is a bit of a struggle and the body's kind of adjusting. But then if you don't do it, like on our day off, we missed it. So it's addictive. So you just need to get over that first hurdle, which is finding the motivation to get the process started. So I always say whatever somebody feels is manageable for them, start there, and then incrementally build it up.
That sounds great. That sounds really great. Now, do you find that it takes a lot of mental discipline to get started, or can someone kind of stick their toe in the water and test it?
Get started, I must say, it was a struggle for me. I was waking up usually at 11, 12 if I didn't have anything to do, so it was a normal thing for me. And it has to be just rebuilding your mind. But I think once you understand the benefit, because once I started doing it every day, now I'm thinking, well, I can sacrifice an hour's sleep or so and go to bed earlier for the benefit that I'll have the next day because of the practice. So there are so many instant benefits, even if you do it for a couple of days, that it is addictive, as Gary said. And it actually makes you, it's like something that you crave. So the beginning is tough, but once you see the benefits, it's quite easy.
Very good, very good. When it comes to, well, we talk a lot. We talked a little bit about going into how we say it, like enlightenment, or the liberation, as you said. Is that the goal of yoga? Is that the meaning, or what we're, I don't want to say striving for, but I guess the shiny ring at the end of the path, so to speak?
That's certainly the original goal. That was why the system was designed, to get to this liberation point. And we discussed this subject in the philosophy classes that we had. It's because, well, why do you need to reach this point? And there is an understanding in the yoga circles and in some of the books that I've read, that if you actually get to this liberation point, then it helps with the reincarnation cycle. So if you can reach liberation in this lifetime, you're able to carry more of the progress from this life into the next life. So that's one side of it. I mean, ultimate liberation, you can say, is not returning to the physical plane. But that's a kind of a longer discussion, because I think some people would choose to return and help others anyway.
Yeah, that's something I hope I don't do next time. But I always joke around. I'm like, did I agree to this again? But anyway, what are some of you were talking about the philosophy of yoga and some of the philosophy classes that you guys might be teaching. Can you tell us, what do you mean by the philosophy of yoga, and what are some points that stick out to you that you'd like to get across today?
Yeah, well, so there was these two subjects that we touched on earlier: the yama, the social conduct, and our teacher actually described it as this is the part of the process of creating harmony with yourself and the universe. So so there's non-injury and violence, which is one aspect, and that can work obviously on a physical and emotional level, but also not just on a personal level, but all the way down to the insects and plants and that kind of thing. So you don't do any any injury or violence you want to avoid. And then there's truthfulness, so you don't embellish or lie. So all of these kind of things can create disharmony with your, you could say, intuition. And non-stealing, which is one shared with the Ten Commandments, because I kind of see these two aspects like the Ten Commandments of yoga. Really, there's 10 of them for a start. And then there was one which they call celibacy, but it's actually would translate to more like protecting your vital force. And again, our teacher said it doesn't mean not having like a partner, but I think it was more to do with not wasting your vital force unnecessarily, if you get my drift on that one. And non-greed was the last one. So they're that's the social conduct side. So non-injury, truthfulness, non-stealing, celibacy, and non-greed, and that comes under yama. And then the other side is the personal conduct and niyama, which again has 5 sections. So the first one is the purification. So that's where like the neti that Olga mentioned and the breathing exercises. Contentment, so not striving after things, perhaps things that are unobtainable, but just being content with where you are now. It doesn't mean not working towards goals in life, because we do need to accomplish things, but being content with what you have at that moment in time. And then number 3, which is tapas, or penance. And funnily enough, we had a very basic hut on the yoga teacher training, and they put words on all of the different huts that people were staying on, and ours had tapas, with huge writing all over it, because it was very basic, not even hot water in there, but we adapted pretty quickly. So I guess kind of depends how you want to look at penance. It's a big subject worthy of discussion perhaps another time, but certainly I've done things that I'm not so happy about in the past, so trying to make up for those. And number 4 is spiritual study, because there's always these areas that we're studying and growing and learning about, and basically you want to be constantly evolving to your own ability. So there should be some study in your life to create this process of inner growth continuing. And then the final one, which is just surrendering to, you could say, the God Supreme, the benevolent universe is how I tend to think of it, and kind of putting your path in the hands of something greater than you, and feeling where you need to go forwards. And so that's the you could say the 10 commandments of yoga.
Yes. And you can see the parallel, actually, and not only with the biblical 10 commandments. I see parallels with the 12 steps of recovery, or other spiritual teachings. So it seems to overlay quite a bit, and I can't help but feel the words integrity keeps coming in as I'm listening to you. Having integrity with your spirit, integrity with your mind and your body, and your honesty. And so, yeah, I like it. Where can these philosophies be found, or are they just teachings from that particular path?
No, it's widely recognised. So okay. If you type in 8 limbs of yoga, I mean, one of the issues with it is the translation from the Sanskrit, because I did look on Google at trying to find the same explanations that we developed in our yoga philosophy classes in India, and there was a huge variety of these 10 different elements, and a lot of them didn't feel as close to what we were given. So yama and niyama, Yama, Y-A-M-A, and Niyama is N-I-Y-A-M-A. Those are the subjects to look up. But if anyone wants more information, they can always contact Olga and I, and we can give some links. But it does link back to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which we discussed in one of our previous shows together.
Yes.
Featured in that book as well.
Wonderful. And that was a great show, and it's still very popular on YouTube if anybody wants to catch that. Just type in Gary Evans, Bernard Alvarez, Yoga, Olga. Anyway, it's a great show. Everyone really loves that. With that, I can't help but feel, for me, I'm seeing very many parallels with the practices that I do. I do something, actually I was trained in an old way. It was called a psychic energy workshop, and it's like this 13-week thing of moving energy around your body, and to this day I do what's called, I call it energy aerobics. And I can't help but feel there's something similar to that. Is there something similar to, is it directing and focusing energy throughout your body, manipulating it, moving it, channeling it? How do you see it?
Well, I think it's all of the ones that you mentioned, because effectively in the Hatha yoga tradition we say asanas help you create energy. Asanas are postures. And then pranayama, the breathing exercises to extend life force, extend it. And then mudras and bandhas, which these kind of things. And like locks, like you sometimes see people all sitting in lotus posture. That's one of the locks. These things are aimed at conserving energy and putting it inside your body and distributing it along the spine. And then it's considered that once you achieve this state that your energy is in your body and it's distributed along your chakras, the two nadis, and nadis are energy channels in your body. There are 72,000 nadis in total, but there are three most important: Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. So once you practice all these Hatha yoga practices, the two nadis, Ida and Pingala, which look like this, they're just diagonal and they go all through your body. So from the bottom of the spine to the top crown of your head, they get in balance and they let the Kundalini to arise. And once the Kundalini arises, the Sushumna, which is the central channel, gets open, and that's how you reach liberation, which actually was a very interesting explanation for me, because I've never even heard of anyone explaining it that well and in practical terms, because many people talk about Kundalini awakening or Kundalini arising as something really spiritual or esoteric. And in our teaching, it was just practice this thing, asanas, pranayamas, mudras, bandhas, and also sometimes kriyas if you need cleansing. Kriyas are techniques to cleanse your body. And then you'll just reach the state when your nadis, the main nadis, are in balance, and you'll see the awakening of Kundalini. And that's the most amazing thing I think I've learned from our teaching.
That sounds great. Wonderful. Thank you. We've only got a few more minutes left, but before, I want to go into what you guys are going to be doing and where you're going to be teaching, but before that, what's one bit of advice for our listeners and our viewers of how they can start? What would be the first step to get started in a yoga path or a yoga practice?
Don't aim too big. So don't make a mountain out of this in your mind when we're talking about hours of things. Don't try that as your starting point. Find something manageable. And I mean, there's loads of good teachers and examples on YouTube, and pretty much any length of yoga or breathing or yoga nidra, the relaxation yoga for withdrawal of the senses. You can just type in the name and the length you want, and YouTube will give you multiple examples, and then just work through those and find a teacher. So just start off with something small, and over time you'll be able to extend that. But the most important thing always is to start.
Wonderful. Yes. I agree. Just get started. Don't push it. We've only got about 2 minutes left. Gary and Olga, tell us what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be teaching, and where can people find out more about the work that you've been doing?
We're currently teaching yoga in Surrey and Southwest London, UK. And we're currently doing gong bath, Himalayan style yoga teaching, and mindfulness, and as well as chanting and gong bath. And there are timetables on our website, which is holistichealingtherapy.co.uk. So you can find any classes there. But currently we're working with communities quite a lot to build awareness about the environment, because we, in our last interview, we talked about our nature therapy walks in Surrey. Also working with businesses to raise awareness about the benefits of mindfulness at workplace, because stress is a huge issue, of course, at the moment at any place you go to. And just building a base for us, probably, of lovely, like-minded people with whom we can share and just increase the quality of everyone's life, in hope that everyone can benefit. And yeah, so I think that's...
Yeah, and you can find us on Twitter and Facebook as well. We're always happy to hear from people. If there's any questions, yeah, please get in touch.
That's great. Well, we're out of time, and I thank you guys so much for joining me again. It's always a pleasure. To our listeners, next week, I am going to be doing another reading from the Book of One. I'm looking forward to getting a lot of it on audio, so you can join us here live for that. To everybody out there in Facebook land and Revolution Radio world, we love you. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.